Welcome to the birdhouse. Come on in. I got stuck on Thunderbirds when I was very young. My grandmother lived across the road from a Ford dealership. I was approximately 9 to 10 years old when I saw my first 55 Thunderbird. I was in love, fell in love immediately. It's never changed from that day. My collection at this point, my prize piece is a 1956 Thunderbird, which has been fully restored by Horsepower. My wife has a 1959 Thunderbird convertible behind us, and I have the 1962 Sports Roadster sitting behind me as well. I've had the 56 I have now is my fourth one. It's the one that finally is everything I wanted to have, but I spent very few years in my life without a Thunderbird in my garage. I think it's because they were so different from everything else. Back when I was a kid, all the cars were big, metal, bulky, but this Thunderbird was just so gorgeous. The lines are so clean. When I was 16, I got to drive my first one because I was working at a car dealership. The car was traded in. I prepped it for the lot. I was allowed to take it for a test drive. That was it. That iced me for Thunderbirds the rest of my life. The baby birds were I think the 55 wasn't quite as big a hit it was supposed to be. It came out because Chevy came out with the Corvette. So Ford wanted to do something to sort of compete with the Corvette. And actually the Thunderbirds, when they initially came out, outpaced the Corvettes. As far as my favorite is the 56. The 55s had a 6-volt ignition system and only had a 292. Really didn't have a whole lot of pep and pickup and get going. When they came out with the 56, they made modifications. Body-wise, it looked almost the same. They added sun visors, which are basically worthless anyhow, but they added sun visors, they added outside vents to get air in on the floor. It was available with a really nice Continental kit. 55, you could get an aftermarket Continental kit, which was pretty ugly. But the basic 55 was still it was a sweet looking body style. But again, the 56 just made changes. They went from a 292 to a 312, added some more features to it. You could get power steering, power brakes, or manual steering, manual brakes. From my history, manual steering, manual brakes, that little car was like driving a Mack truck. So anybody who ever gets one, I would strongly advise get power steering, power brakes. The one that I have now did not have power steering and power brakes, which is what I mainly went to Horsepower to start with. And the day I met Randy, I told him what I wanted to do. He said, "We can do that for you." That started a 7-month journey that went from power disc brakes and power steering to rack and pinion steering, a 5-speed transmission, electric fans, a paint job. It just made my dream come true. 57, it was still a baby bird, but they put fins on it, which I thought messed the whole car up. I didn't like the fins. I didn't like the way they dipped the bumper in the front. It was just, it's still a baby bird, so it has that niche for me, but I never get excited about buying a 57 that much. The 58, 59, and 60 were called square birds because of the square shape they have. 61, 62, 63, they went more to the rounded lines, and the lines are so, that almost took me back to the baby birds because the lines are so smooth and so clean. It's just classy. My wife's family was into racing, but she's going to a number of shows with me, so we would start to walk around and look at all the other cars, and she would say, "Oh, I like this one," or "I like that one," or so I said, "Why don't you find a car you really like, and we'll see if we can't get you something to take to shows." She heard a conversation between me and another gentleman. I happened to mistakenly say that the only full-size Thunderbird I like was a 1960. I walked back to Kim's Googling and I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, you said you like 1960 Thunderbirds, so I'm trying to look at them. I really like them." I said, "Oh, I was wrong because I like 1962 Thunderbirds, the 1960s. She said, "Well, it doesn't matter, I like them." Anyhow, long story short, she spent a couple of days, we were looking and looking. She found this '59 Thunderbird in Florida. And it was a real pale pink. I got a picture of it and a text message that said, "I'm in love." We flew to Florida, looked at the car, found some problems, but nothing that couldn't be fixed at Horsepower. So we made a deal on that car, and while she was doing the paperwork on that car, I happened to see a 1962 Thunderbird convertible sitting there. And like 62 was the year I really liked. So I'm looking at this car and I found a poster board in the back of the car that said it's a 1962 Thunderbird Sports Roadster. And the Sports Roadster is the rarest Thunderbird ever built. There was only 1,427 of them built. So I'm looking at this car, but the tonneau to make it the Sports Roadster wasn't there. So I got the salesman's attention and I said, "Do you have the tonneau cover that goes on over the rear seats?" He said, "Oh yeah, that's just sitting over in a corner." And I was like, "Do you know what you really have sitting here?" Long story short, I took it out for a test drive. I was in love with it, and we ended up bringing 2 cars home from Florida instead of 1. I jokingly told her when we got this car and started having it worked on that, "You're not allowed to park beside me because I don't want you beating me at a car show." She said, "No, I'm parking right beside you because I want to whoop your butt." It hasn't worked out that way yet. I'm kind of disappointed because I really, really want her to get some trophies, and that car deserves trophies. Hopefully this summer, we're going to turn things around and we'll set up another trophy rack for Kim as well. I can't think of a more appropriate way to go to a car show than to look in that mirror and see my wife behind me with her show car and me with my show car. It's a great, great feeling. Without her, I could never have done the things I'm doing. She's 14 years younger than me, but when we found each other, it clicked immediately. We were both going through divorces at the same time, and it's been a marvelous almost 30 years together now, and I couldn't be happier. I don't know what I would do without her. Whether or not we'll add any more to the collection, I don't know yet. There's always that possibility because the stock market is so volatile, up and down and up and down. You're losing money, you might get a little. What you invest in these, we're not going to lose money in these. These cars appreciate in value. Again, supply and demand has an effect on it, but if you get specific models, you can really make a good investment. I feel that with what we have here, we have a really good investment. I know numbers that I've heard recently on the 62s. I know this has been a fantastic investment for us. There are times when you want to fix up an old car or restore an old car or really bring it back to show value. You're going to put a lot of money in it. You may never ever get out of it financially what you want, but I don't think we always do it for financial reasons. Like my 56 is that's my dream. It's now the way I've dreamt of one being from the very first day I saw one. This has everything that I want. There's nothing more that I would want to do to it. I told somebody recently, we were having a conversation about young kids and drugs. I said, I don't need to do drugs. I get in at 56. That's as high as I ever need to get when I drive. As far as the sign above the door, we jokingly, after we had these 3 cars last year, at the end of last year, we started to refer to this as the birdhouse. And our kids somehow found a guy that does woodworking and had that fantastic sign made up for us. So this is officially not the pole barn, not the barn, this is the birdhouse.